Hi everyone, this is Tevi live from Franklin. Happy Memorial Day. So we're starting our last week of screencasts, guys. This is the Vietnam War. We're doing part 1 today, which is the American beginning to get involved. And we're going to go right to the history of invasion. So guys, on part 1 of your guided notes, go to Overview of Foreign Occupation. And so to begin, I chose this picture for a reason. So guys, the Chinese Empire had controlled Vietnam for thousands of years. So you can see some of their resistance here in the streets. In the late 1800s, guys, the French began ruling Vietnam as well as neighboring Laos and Cambodia. So this region became known as French Indochina. And then things changed along the world theater because in 1940, Japan invaded Vietnam. So we kind of have a long history of foreign occupation in this small country in Southeast Asia. And so I like to also pose this question: why did Vietnam matter to the United States? And so this is a great slide for you guys to copy and attach to your guided notes. You don't have to, but I do want you guys to add this to your guided notes. So guys, for this map, please take a look, and I want you to locate a few things. So for Malaysia, located down here, you want to put down that they produce large amounts of tin and rubber, which were needed by Western industry. So if Malaysia fell to communism, that supply could be cut off. So guys, next here, look at here. Here's the Strait of Malacca. So you guys just want to note that a lot of the world's shipping passes through this narrow strait. So if Vietnam became communist, bombers would be in range to threaten to block this strait. So guys, also for the Japanese, you want to kind of look over here on this side. So Japan, guys, is located up here, but Japan was a key U.S. ally, so it really helped to contain communism in Asia. And Japan, think about its geography, guys, they had to import their food, and so this region right here of South Vietnam was very important for food for Japan. If they fell to communism, then a major food supplier, especially for rice, would be cut off. So that's for Japanese, this area of South Vietnam. For Indochina, guys, so located, right down here, Japan depended on it for their oil. So if Southeast Asia fell to communism, oil supplies might be cut off to Japan. And so to conclude, guys, this domino theory is that, especially under President Truman and then continued by President Eisenhower, this was the idea that if Vietnam fell to communism, the rest of Southeast Asia would follow. So that is really good to keep in mind, guys, as we go further into this Vietnam conflict. Alright guys, so we did our overview, and make sure you added those points from the map. So let's go on to number 1, the growth of Vietnamese nationalism. So you guys want to put down that by the early 1900s, Vietnamese began to resist foreign rule. So they formed several political parties, guys, to push for independence. So one of the leaders of the nationalist movement, for almost 30 years, was Nguyen Thanh Tan, better known by his assumed name, Ho Chi Minh. He was very well educated, traveled to Europe, and he lived in London and Paris. And even in 1919, guys, at the Versailles Peace Conference after World War I, he presented a petition for Vietnamese independence, but it was rejected. Ho Chi Minh later visited the Soviets, right, where he became a big advocate of communism. And in 1930, guys, he returned to Southeast Asia to help found the Indo-Chinese Communist Party to work to overthrow French rule. And so once Japan invaded his country in World War II, he organized a nationalist group known as the Viet Minh. I spelled it down here for you guys. So guys, the Viet Minh united both communists and non-communists, that's key, in order to kick out the Japanese. Soon after, guys, the U.S. began sending aid to the Viet Minh. Alright guys, we're on to number 2. I chose this picture for a reason, so we'll get to it. So the French Indochina, remember this region. So guys, America begins to aid the French in this section. So guys, when Japan surrenders, after World War II, it gave up control of Indochina. And here, guys, Ho Chi Minh quickly seized on an opportunity to establish independence for his country. However, France had no intention of giving up its colonial empire in Southeast Asia. So the French troops returned in 1946 to try to drive the Viet Minh forces back into the countryside. Guys, the Viet Minh slowly fought back against the French regime and gained control of the countryside. France then, as they were losing to the Viet Minh, appealed to the U.S. For help, and this really put America into a tough decision. So our policy globally, was to oppose colonialism, right? So we had supported the British, for example, to give India their independence in 1947. But things are different here in the Cold War. So imagine this independence movement with communism, right? So American officials certainly did not want France to control Vietnam, yet they also did not want Vietnam to be communist. So I think their hands are tied. So before I move on, guys, this picture just shows how the French treated the Vietnamese when they would resist their rule. So here are some of the Vietnamese. This is kind of probably shown to instill fear, so that they would not rebel. Pretty scary. Alright guys, so I mentioned our hands were tied, right? But two events do convince Truman to help France. The fall of China to communism, right? That certainly is a huge factor. And then later on, soon the outbreak of the Korean War. So these two things indicate that the Soviet Union had begun their major push to impose communism on East Asia. So we certainly soon after began sending military aid to the French forces in Vietnam. So I mentioned earlier on the map, guys, about the domino theory. So you do want to just note here at the end of number 2 that President Eisenhower continued this policy known as the domino theory, which is the idea that if Vietnam fell to communism, then the rest of Southeast Asia would follow, just like dominoes. I just want us to pause here, guys. So just take a look at the French influence in Vietnam. So this style of building, you would see in Paris. But here you're seeing it in Southeast Asia. So this just kind of gives you a sense of the flavor and the culture in Vietnam. So you'll see that today if you ever visit. Alright guys, so I chose this picture also for a reason. So let's get right into number 3, guys, the defeat at Dien Bien Phu. So guys, the French struggled against the Viet Minh, who used guerrilla tactics. So you want to define that, guys, as kind of hit and run tactics and ambush, and they used irregular troops to blend into the civilian population, making it difficult for regular armies to identify them and fight. So here's a picture of the Viet Minh. Alright guys, the war was very unpopular in France. They were heavy casualties, and they just could not figure out how to defeat the Viet Minh. So guys, a final thing the French tried, the French commander decided to occupy a mountain town known as Dien Bien Phu. So this was his intention to try to cut off their supply lines and force the Viet Minh into open battle. So on May 7th, 1954, the French were surrounded there, and they fell to the Viet Minh. So this convinced the French, this last effort, they completely were attacked, to make peace and withdraw from Indochina. So they surrendered. So what were the Geneva Accords? So I have here pictured Eisenhower and the leader from South Vietnam. So this is negotiations, guys, to end the conflict. They were held in Geneva, Switzerland. And so the Geneva Accords, guys, fill in, divided Vietnam along the 17th parallel. So Ho Chi Minh and the Viet Minh were in control of the north, and a pro-Western regime was in control of the south. And part of these accords, guys, said that in 1956, elections were supposed to be held to unite the country under a single government. So guys, once the French troops left, the U.S., guys, became the main protector of the new government in the South. So the nationalist leader there was named, sorry guys, Ngo Diem. So I will have to spell that for you guys. Hold on. Alright, this will be a good bonus, guys. So it's Ngo, that's his first part of his name, D-I-N-H, second part of his name, and D-I-E-M, Diem, third part of his name. So South Vietnamese leader, very important for us. So guys, he was pro-Western, and fiercely anti-communist. He was also Catholic, and he welcomed almost 1 million, guys, North Vietnamese Catholics to escape Ho Chi Minh's rule and to come live in the South. So the elections, guys, mandated by the Geneva Accords never took place. In a special referendum, Diem became president of the new Republic of Vietnam in the South. He then, he didn't permit the election, guys, because he feared that Ho Chi Minh would win. Eisenhower turned the other cheek. He approved this. We didn't follow those Geneva Accords, but he then began to increase aid to South Vietnam. And so I have a final question for you. What are your predictions? What happened the last time we divided a country? So here's a picture of the 17th parallel, North Vietnam, South Vietnam. We're going to be getting into the escalation of the conflict tomorrow. So hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you all tomorrow. This is Tevi signing off.